We're back here at the Republican convention in Cleveland, which you can hear behind me, with the Wall Street Journal columnist Kim Strassel, who is the new book out, The Intimidation Game: How the Left is Silencing Free Speech. Ben Domenech is the publisher of The Federalist, and Matt Schlapp is the chairman of the American Conservative Union. Kim, let me start with you. Mike Pence is now on the ticket. What does that mean?
It's a good thing for Donald Trump in general. This is a guy who's been in Washington, so he's respected by a lot of the leaders that Donald Trump still needs to reassure out there. He is an evangelical Christian. This is a community that Donald Trump really needs to get to come out and vote for him this fall. He's a policy guy, ran the Republican Study Committee, which is something that's really valued by a lot of people out there who care about conservative policy. And he's just an articulate guy as well, too. He's going to be good for getting across Donald Trump's message.
Ben, a lot of the people I talk to go through that list of qualifications and note that that's quite different than Donald Trump. So is this a sign of the breadth of the Republican coalition, or is it a match that might have some difficulty staying together?
I think it's an attempt on the part of the Trump campaign to really normalize him as a candidate, and it's a direct geographic play to compete in the Midwest. I think that Mike Pence is the kind of candidate who's going to help out in some of these Midwestern states where Donald Trump is more competitive than perhaps other Republicans have been. The problem for him is that he is another white guy, a Christian conservative, kind of an old school Republican Bush era kind of conservative, who may not have enough appeal to compete, to help Donald Trump compete in a state like Florida, which could prove more challenging for him.
What do you think about that, Matt? I mean, I talked to one activist in the party, Republican Party, who said they doubled down on white guys with this pick. What does that mean in terms of the map, in terms of outreach, and how the ticket's going to compete in those states we all are so familiar with?
This is one of the ways in which Donald Trump is unconventional. You usually pander to voters. You say, oh, here's where we're demographically weak, so we'll try to make demographic improvements on the ticket. And instead he said, who is the vice president I need to be an effective president? Who can help me kind of go through the Washington dysfunction and try to make sense of it? And who's someone who's got enough government experience, including as an executive, to make the kind of change I want to make? So, yeah, you can look at all the ways on the optics that it might not be perfect, but it's a home run in every other way, and he's going to come out of this convention with conservatives and Republicans behind him like they've never been before.
Ben, Paul Manafort wouldn't buy this idea, but a lot of the people I've talked to keep using the word stabilize, as if the nominee is a volatile mixture and needs a drop of something to. So it's not so much what Mike Pence may do in office, as Matt's points are taken, but it's that he is a signal that Donald Trump has listened to those who've been advising him and saying, we need something a little more solid in the ticket, not something so volatile.
Perhaps he has. I think the problem for him with this Pence pick, though, is that if he hopes to completely lock down people who had objections to Trump within the party, I'm not sure the Pence pick is going to do that. He's normalizing to a certain degree, but for those who have been resistant to Trump to this point, Paul Manafort is very familiar with crushing rebellions of all kinds. And I think in this context, there are a lot of people who still don't like Donald Trump, and even picking someone like Mike Pence is not going to bring them back onto the Republican wagon this time around, particularly swing voters and independents, who he needs to appeal to.
Yeah, only Donald Trump can do that, and I think that that's the thing that the Trump campaign still needs to understand. You look out there, he's unified behind him about 75% of the Republican Party. You need it to be above 90. And Mike Pence is going to help with that a little bit. But that's what this week is going to have to be about for the Trump campaign, is him standing up there on stage saying, I want your vote. I'm going to reassure you on these things and these things and these things. Maybe it's just a question, too, of saying you need to vote for me because we can't afford to have Hillary Clinton president. But whatever that message is, it's got to be where he can get up to that 90%. And then, by the way, he could be in an interesting position because he has pulled a lot of people from outside the party in as well, too, that are behind him.
John.
But this is unification.
John, if I could just say, I have people on the board, of which I'm the chairman, who have called me since the Pence pick, who were in the never Trump kind of camp. And they've said, this reassures me enough, not only to support Donald Trump, some of them are getting on airplanes and coming here. I've talked to conservatives across the country that this is exactly the type of pick that they wanted to see him make, because he's keeping the trust with those primary voters when he said, I'm going to govern on these conservative values. So this is, I have anecdotal evidence that this is happening across the country.
The Mike Pence pick does not change the fact that the Republican Party is now the party of Donald Trump. 150 years ago, this party was begun by Abraham Lincoln on the idea that constitutional rights were not bound by race or creed, that the American eagle's wings were broad enough to accept all who would come here. Now this party is coming to Cleveland to die. This is not the party of Abraham Lincoln anymore. It is the party of Donald Trump. It has traded statesmanship for xenophobia. It has traded free markets for protectionism. It has traded the higher principles of our better angels for the belief in party identity politics. That is why they are getting 0% of the black vote in Pennsylvania. That is why you're going to continue to see this kind of race-baiting approach to politics. I think it's completely true that this is the end of the party of Lincoln.
Let me just say, this is the very type of elite Washington judgment that the voters in the Republican, let me finish. Let me go now. That the voters across this country are sick and tired of, not just Republicans, a lot of union voters, a lot of independent voters. They believe that when you tell them, these people who voted for Donald Trump in record numbers, when you call them racist or xenophobic, let me finish. When you say that they're race baiting or responding to those policies, you're judging them. And these are voters who have given him more votes than any Republican has run for office. I refuse to believe that those Republican activists and those conservative activists are racist and that they're ill-intended. They love their country and they simply want to take it back.
They are desperate for change. They are desperate for something different than the elites who have failed them for far too long. But they have turned in their desperation to a man who they don't fully understand and who is not going to deliver on his promises because he's taken us away from the principle that actually...
Great state of South Dakota.
So, Kim, do you have a way to adjudicate this debate?
Look, I think you have to make a distinction between the party and a man who's leading it as a somewhat controversial head of the party at the moment. In terms of the party, the Republican Party has always been a very dynamic and fluid entity that has a lot of changes and ebbs and flows in it. And I think what we're seeing again is some more changes out there. Donald Trump, again, he's going to have to try to unify some of this.
But, and Matt, back to Ben's point, though, and what I was talking about with the earlier guests. I mean, Senator Rubio isn't here, Susana Martinez, and Governor Nikki Haley. These are not elitists. These are people from in the states. They are governors. They used to be the farm team of the Republican Party. The farm team is not here. That seems to be a tension that needs to be explained.
I'm not going to spin you on this. I'm not going to tell you, oh, don't look at that. That doesn't mean anything. It does mean something. The fact is, Donald Trump has not always been a Republican. He's a recent Republican. There's no question that he comes from outside the party, and he's taking on these elected officials who have been in power. And of course they're unhappy with it. It makes them uncomfortable. It makes a lot of people uncomfortable who are the party regulars who have been running these conventions every 4 years. And we shouldn't be surprised that that's happening. And here's the fact. What's going on in Republicans and conservatives' minds is this. They don't have to be for 100% of what Trump's for. They just have to be for 60% of what Trump's for. And that's the fight that's going inside all these voters' heads. And what they're going to see this week is going to tip it over that 50% mark. And you're going to come out of here with more Republicans and more conservatives. It might not be 90, 92%, but it's going to be right in that vicinity. And it's going to be enough with all the independents and all the unions and all the Democratic voters he's going to pull over. It's going to be enough to win in November.
I think the question, though, is if there's 10% they absolutely cannot vote for. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, like 60% of what he stands for. But if there's something that's just a deal breaker for them, then that's still a problem.
Do you think there is a deal breaker?
I think that for some Republicans out there still is a deal breaker, just with his personality, which is why this moment is so important for him. He's going to have to stand up and ask. One thing you never really hear Donald Trump say is, I really want your vote.
Do you think, though, given the qualms that people have, you can fix it with a PR show, which is what everybody here admits this is? I mean, these are deep questions that have been raised about.
Conventions are always about an opportunity for a candidate to showcase who they are. And yeah, they're a bit staged, but this is about Donald Trump letting people know who he is.
Donald Trump is currently running about 10 to 12 percentage points behind Marco Rubio in Florida. That's the difference that he needs to close. He needs to get those voters to come back and be convinced that he will be a better president than Hillary Clinton.
All right. Thank you all very much for this spirited discussion. We'll see after a week's work where we all are on our positions, and we'll be right back.